Welcome everybody to the Determined Podcast. My name is That Pasta Guy, and here with me today, as always, is the lovable, amazingly sweet Cupcake Paints.
Hi.
And also here with us today, our very special guest, Undertale Thiggums, or Sam, just to make things easier.
Yep. Hello, I am indeed Undertale Thingems, or Sam.
Yeah.
Sam is way easier to say.
Yes,
it is.
So Sam, could you please introduce yourself to people who might not know who you are? Or
yeah.
might not...
I'm Sam, aka Undertale Thingems. And what people might know me for, or if you go look me up, what you'll probably find is my Undertale fan comic, Unexpected Guests. I do a lot of other little side Undertale projects because I can never stick to just one story at a time. But that's the comic I've been drawing for 4 years, probably closer to 5, honestly. It's been a long time.
You've been in for the long haul.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, for sure.
So yeah, we have some questions that we're gonna ask you from our list, but we also encourage people in the chat, if they wish to speak, to ask any questions they wish. Which, by the way, Sam, I'm going to send you the link to the questions, so you can basically it's weird to put it like this, but mentally prepare yourself whenever you...
So you can think of good answers before we ask the questions.
Yeah, I suspect that many of them are going to be things I've actually already answered on my blog several times.
Yeah, I know.
We'll see. There might be some surprises.
Yeah, you are known for being one of those people who's just like, every time you get a Tumblr ask, you're just like, hang on, I have an answer for this.
Yep. Yeah, that's kind of what happens when you've been drawing a comic for as long as I have, I guess, is, people, they'll go through and read the comic, but then they won't also go through my entire blog of, over 4,000 posts.
Uh-huh.
So, I can understand why they, might not run across the answers to their questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird for me, you being you being named Sam, because my older sister is named Sam, so I'm just like, hey Sam, no wait, you're not Sam, no wait, you are.
Well,
not
if you
the Sam I'm thinking of.
Yeah, if you would rather go by my username, Thingems works as a short name.
No, it's a bit weird. It's not anything that I won't stop saying it for, but yeah. Oh, Cotton in the chat. Have you ever considered parades on this podcast? Parades on this podcast? I do not know what that means, or if they are Undertale creator, but no, I have not. Anyways,
pay no mind. It's Cotton. We all know Cotton.
Yeah. Anyways, first question, probably a pretty standard basic first question for any sort of interview with an Undertale creator like this is, what made you interested in Undertale in the first place? Like, what brought Undertale to your attention, and what made you want to play it?
So it was people I followed on Tumblr, actually. I think one had backed the original Kickstarter way back when, so I saw, bits and pieces of fan art for it, supporting the Kickstarter back in the day. But it didn't really, pique my interest just yet. And then I want to say in about November of 2015, one of my friends started reblogging a lot of art. And I kept seeing all of these characters, and honestly, it was seeing cool fan art of Sans with his Gaster Blasters that made me go, okay, I have to see what the deal with the skeleton is. Oh, yes, it was Sans with his attacks that piqued my interest enough to say, okay, what's the deal with this? And then, I watched a playthrough of it, just because I'm not that much of a gamer, and I wasn't sure I was actually going to be able to get past, uh, Undertale's very unique, playstyle with the battles. And I do indeed get stuck, especially on like Muffet and Metaton. Like those are the worst fights for me to get through.
Really?
Yeah.
Those
Like
are just
usually you're
ridicule.
Untied, so those aren't ones you usually hear.
Undyne is tough, but once you figure out the trick with her, then she's not so bad. But I think with especially Metaton, there's just so much dodging that you have to do that it's a lot.
Honestly,
I
the
think the
boss
last time I
fight
tried to
I
play,
had
I
the
got
most
stuck.
trouble with when playing through the game was actually Asgore, just because of I didn't expect it to be as well crazy as it is, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, also just the
So
scary
yeah.
fact of realizing that he was holding back the entire time. So I'm just like, oh geez, what is he actually like at his full power? But that's for
Yeah.
discussion later on. Uh, yeah.
So yeah, I watched the playthrough and just instantly fell in love, and it's like, okay, I do have to try and play this for myself. And I've actually only actually finished the game like once, and of course it was True Pacifist. So,
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
but yeah, I played it, got into it. I've been obsessed ever since.
Nice.
Yeah. All right. Well. Next question is when relating to you. Just another kind of basic question is your art style. It's a very nice. First off, it's a very nice art style. I like it a lot. I love the
Very,
expressions
very
and the
clean.
yeah. I love the expressions. I love how you draw action and just the character designs
Hmm.
you've come up for the characters on the surface is also really great.
Thank
Uh,
you.
yeah. So, how long have you been drawing for, and what inspired your art style for the comic?
All right. So how long have you been drawing for is like asking how long have you been walking? Because I think it's literally the same. Like I've been drawing for as long as I can remember. We have drawings that I did when I was like 2.5 years old. So
Aw,
Aw.
little
basically I've been
baby
drawing for
Sam
all of my
just
life.
sketching up stuff.
Yeah, I think it was actually the picture I remember that we pulled out was a picture of my mom riding a T-Rex, which I feel like
Awesome.
maybe says a lot about me.
That is amazing though.
It means you're awesome, and you think your mom is awesome
Thanks.
because she can ride a T-Rex.
Um, so yeah, I've been drawing and just making art in general for a very long time. And then as far as what inspired my art style, specifically for the comic, because I feel like I don't have a real like distinctive style for my art in general, but for the comic specifically, I drew on one of my bigger art influences in general, which is Hiromu Arakawa, the author of the manga Full Metal Alchemist. So,
Oh, that
yes, Unexpected
Ooh.
Guest is based on anime.
I mean,
Anime
it
is
is
real.
very
Anime is
anime.
real.
But the biggest I think reason for that is because let's be real. Full Metal Alchemist is an amazing story.
Oh yeah,
Like
it's
Yes.
it blends
fantastic.
a huge cast. It has great world building. There is an awesome blend of both humor and serious subjects. And from an artistic standpoint, like yes, it's still very distinctly the Japanese anime slash manga shonen style of
Hmm.
drawing, but Hiromu Arakawa's attention to anatomy and detail and the variety of character designs that she came up with is really good. It's like, it's not super stylized like a lot of other series are. And so, like, I found that in middle school, so I basically learned how to draw humans by copying Hiruma Arakawa's art style, and I feel like that honestly actually gave me a pretty good basis for how to draw people in general. So that is probably one of the biggest influences on Unexpected Guests in terms of art style and pacing and in general. So yeah, if you haven't watched Full Metal Alchemist, watch it. It's so good.
Dr. Eka brings up a interesting point. Full Metal Alchemist 2005. Well, I always thought it was called 2003 or Brotherhood.
Yeah. Or Brotherhood.
Brotherhood is the newer one. I forget when that one came out, but the original anime 2003. Don't watch that one.
Yeah.
Not that it's just like really awful, but it's worse.
It doesn't follow the manga.
No. Not completely.
Yeah, because from what I heard, the manga wasn't finished by the time that the anime had gotten to, the point in the manga where it was unfinished, and so they kind of took it in a different direction.
Yeah. Which, like, I understand why they took it in a different direction, so they didn't step on Arakawa's toes, but at the same time, the story is objectively worse. So if you're gonna watch it as an anime, watch Fullmetal Alchemist. Yeah, yeah. Watch Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood if you watch the anime, but the manga is the original experience.
Yeah.
So I don't want to be that person who's like, the book is always better, but like it lets you really appreciate the art and the world building and stuff too.
Well, when it comes to the anime, a lot of people like I remember the anime reviewer Arcada, also known as Glass Reflection. He basically made the point of if you're going to watch both, watch 2003 first, and then watch Brotherhood, because that's if you watch Brotherhood first, there's no way you're gonna be able to enjoy 2003 as much as you could.
Yeah,
because of just how you just like no, it should be different.
Yeah. Honestly, I feel like Fullmetal Alchemist was the first anime/manga I ever got into, and that set the bar impossibly high. Like no other anime has compared at all. I think the only other like anime type of film has been like Studio Ghibli.
Oh yeah.
Because those are just beautiful. Like that's an entirely different class.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just funny hearing
we could ramble about anime all day.
I mean, it makes sense why people talk. It makes sense why a lot of those films are so amazing, because it was supposed to. It's supposed to be like the director, I'm completely blanking on the name right now.
Miyazaki?
Yeah, Hayao Miyazaki's like last film, and he just goes, and then he's just like, nah, I can do another one, and he just announced that the other week, and I'm just like, Maddie Hatter says, Sam is Alphys
confirmed.
Oh yeah, Alphys is relatable to me in many ways, but I not so much to the like total anime weeb, but definitely like I knew people like her when I was going up through like middle and high school and stuff, so she was very familiar to me.
Yes. I have been called Alphys by my friends before.
Well, for one thing, you do a really good impression of her.
But so yeah, like it honestly shouldn't be surprising that Full Metal Alchemist has such a big influence, because like, you know, Sansa Papyrus and Ed and Al, they have that great brotherly dynamic that I really like in media, of just, you know, siblings who really care about each other.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, by the way, in the chat, Dragon Eve, yes, yes, I do see your comments, and we'll about the fan comic Just Cause and slash fanfic, and we'll look into it when we can.
Yeah, we'll address it soon.
Yeah.
When we can.
Yeah. Anyways.
And as for them not being able to contact us, is it because they don't have a Tumblr
or Discord
or Discord? Because if that's the case, I have a DeviantArt, which can also be used to contact if need be. Anyways.
Yeah, anyways, getting back a bit on topic, since you like talked about like brotherly relationships and like big ensemble casts from FMA, I was just wondering, Unexpected Guest is focused a lot on the Skeleton Brothers, Papyrus and Sans, but it also has a balance with the entire cast of Undertale. How do you try to balance that? Because that's one of the things I notice in a lot of AU stories, and including my own, honestly, the Undertale stories that I've written, is that a lot of the time it's very hard to not put your characters, to put some characters like on the back burner and stuff, but you seem to find a good balance of it. I mean, there is the thing of like a Metaton's kind of not really much of a thing in this comic, at least not yet. I mean, I'm sure you have plenty more to do with this.
Yeah. So yeah, sorry, Metaton fans. He's not really planned on showing up, but I figure he's got better things to do than mess with giant skeleton dragons.
Yeah.
So it kind of really is like, what characters make the most sense for interacting in the story, and then also remembering that, like, yeah, like, you can have focal characters like the Skeleton Brothers, but you have to remember that part of what makes them so interesting is how they interact with the other characters. And then also remember that every character is someone's favorite. And so doing them justice, letting them be involved, remembering that they all have things to contribute, either like different worldviews, different personalities, different hobbies, different knowledge. It's, you know, you have to think about, like, okay, I could write the scene without this character, but what if I added them? What would happen? How would they react to the situation? And so just, I think I also just have a chronic problem of not being able to stay focused on one single character, because they all offer interesting perspectives. And so I've actually sometimes changed which perspective I was using, because I realized a different character would have a more interesting take on things. Mm-hmm. So I feel like that's kind of something that you just, I think, have to try and do and learn how to balance over time. I don't think I have a strict, like, here's the 10 steps to making sure your ensemble cast all gets equal airtime or whatever.
Sounds right out of a freaking it sounds like out of a freaking advertisement, like when like all those ads that Papyrus it was just watching when he was just spacing out in the later part of the comic, just Just like, order now, and you too can perfectly balance all your ensemble cast characters.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's just remembering that, like, this is probably gonna sound bad, but remembering what your resources are, and your resources being your characters that you can kind of set in a scene, and just kind of thinking about, like, okay, how does this character fit into this scene? And, like, sort of, maybe this is more in the editing phase of, like, looking at who's talking too. Like, if you realize that you keep using the same character to speak all the time, then it's like, okay, well, can I maybe have this other character make the same point, but the way that they would do it, so that you kind of mix up who's talking.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's something that I've sort of had practice with before. That, like, some of my early original stories, like, I had a bunch of different characters that I would write, and then in later, like, fan fiction, like, I had a crossover I was working on that involved something like 8 kids all hanging out together, and it's like some of them have, like, cool powers and then others don't. It's like, okay, how do you balance the kids who don't have powers and make them relevant to the kids who do, and stuff like that. So I guess it's just kind of something that I've worked with for a long time, and so that's where all the practice bit of writing comes in.
Yeah, that's a thing. Like, honestly, I me as a writer myself, I really prioritize characters, because I remember this one piece of writing advice that I got that was from all things, a YouTube video reviewing Kim Possible, but it stuck out to me, like, really well, because I think it's pretty true. It's like, honestly, like, focusing on character is actually a really good way to focus on story, because on your story, because if you have good characters, these characters could practically do anything, and people will want to watch and see them do it. I mean, for example, I mean the Undertale cast, like, there are stories where they're doing, like, freaking apocalyptic events, or just going out to the freaking grocery store, and people want to see them do that because of just how good and varied they think the characters are and can be in those different situations.
Exactly. Like, that's kind of why I continue to, write fan fiction and develop my comics and stuff, is because I love these characters. I want to see them continue to do stuff and feel like I'm, still hanging out with them and seeing them go on adventures and things. So yeah, exactly.
Okay, so you talked about your other stories. Along with Unexpected Guests, you've also worked on a couple of other projects, Spark at the Moon and But It Refused. Care to talk about those if you want?
So yeah, even, I think, I'm trying to figure out the timeline here. I think I did start both of those after Unexpected Guests, but not by a whole lot, even though I've only sort of recently started posting them in the last couple of years. Spark at the Moon first, and then But It Refused, the Fusion AU, with this year. And that's because I tend to, have way more ideas than I actually post. Like, there is an Undertalethingems iceberg of Undertale content on my laptop, and
I can very much relate to that, and so can Cupcake. I mean, last night we were just talking with one another about, like, she had all these ideas for, like, AMVs and stuff that slash Animax that she wanted to do it with with certain characters and stuff from across.
I have a problem.
I've got 2 of those myself.
Hey.
Yeah.
Nice. So... Pasta. Sam has 2. How many do I have? 17.
Oh boy. Well, good luck.
I have a problem.
Hey, at least when it comes to my ideas and stuff like that, I can just be like, I'm not good at drawing, or I don't have the money to pay someone who is good at drawing to make that for me. So, I at least have that excuse. I mean, that doesn't account for like all the different story ideas and stuff that I have, which I have so many.
The pain of creative people.
Yep.
Oh yeah. Yep. So,
The bane of
but yeah,
creative people, where you're just like, you could just be sitting down just somewhere, just trying to enjoy yourself, and in the back of your mind you're being like, you have some free time, maybe it's finally time you write that thing down that you've meant to do. So
yeah. With me, it's a lot of unfinished concept fix, where I get like an idea of a thing I want to explore, or like a like maybe a trope that I want to play with that maybe I don't normally headcanon, such as like either of the Skelebros remembering resets, and like that's not a major headcanon of mine, but sometimes you think about, but what if they did? So I've got stuff like that, or just things that is like, it was a fun idea. It's maybe a chapter that could go into unexpected guests, but I don't know how to finish it. So, but yeah, just a miscellany of projects. But Bark at the Moon and But It Refused are both those kind of ideas that I've had them laying around for a long time, and I'm just like, you know what? Let's finally start posting it. Let's see what people think of them.
yeah.
I personally haven't gone a whole bunch into the But It Refused, other than seeing the art you post for it for the different character fusions, which may I say is awesome.
Thank you.
But I have at least I don't remember how far I got into it, but I have read part of Bark at the Moon. And I've always been a fan of Gaster Blaster AUs done right, and so I am definitely a fan of Bark at the Moon.
Yay! And yeah, that was kind of my thing was with Bark at the Moon, was that there's a lot of Gaster Blaster AU stuff out there that is just really, really dark and angsty, and it dwells a lot on like how awful Gaster is to the brothers in that AU, or just Sans, or stuff like that. And I just like, okay, can I do a take on it myself that I actually like, and feels like the characters are themselves, and it's not just angst all the time, or if it is, it's slightly different. Yeah. And like a lot of times, in the fan art I would see like, oh, the brothers just act like rabid dogs or whatever. It's like, okay, but there are other animals. Everyone realizes there are other animals than dogs, right? So it was kind of a chance to bring in a little of my knowledge of animal behavior as well, and sort of make them feel like beasts.
Yeah.
But also themselves.
Yeah, honestly, like the Gaster Blasters in your story, just so many things. Like they act like a little bit of this, a little bit of this animal, a little bit of this animal. It's really interesting to watch.
That's
like
true of the unexpected guest blasters as well. That they have sort of animal archetypes that they're based in.
Yeah, like they purr.
Yeah.
They
they purr. They chase the laser, but then they also like play with like the tire and stuff, and dig, and like a bunch of other things. And I love it that they're kind of like this mixture of a bunch of different animals, because they're not technically any animal. They are bone dragon of some sort.
Exactly. Yeah, like I said, I have sort of like basic guidelines for at least like their energy levels. So like Papyrus's blaster, is high energy, very showy. So it seems fitting to draw on dog and bird behaviors for it. That it's just very bouncy, eager to play, happy to show off and interact. Whereas Sans' blaster, like if you think about it, it's hard to distinguish whether it's a cat or an alligator, because cats and alligators like to lay in the sun. Cats and alligators are ambush predators. Like there's some similarities there, but I try to draw on both for Sans' blaster.
Yeah. Oh, just the interesting stuff about like them having having a good amount of intelligence, actually, where like after a while like chasing the little red dial out for the laser pointer, they just
like
they're just like, nah, I can't get that. I'm not gonna waste my time on it.
Can't catch that. Time to go to sleep.
I have stuff to do. Like what? Going to bed.
Yeah.
I have important naps to catch up on. But anatomy wise, how did you come up with the designs for the blasters, and how'd you design them different from one another to, reflect Papyrus and reflect Sans in a way?
I could write a whole essay about this, but I'll try to keep it short.
In this essay, I will.
Yeah. I mean, basically all I did was, I looked very closely at Sans' blaster, which is the only one we have a canon skull design for from the game. And, tried to figure out, like, okay, this is what Sans' looks like. What's the context in which he's summoning it, which, he's in a battle of both life and death, and also to make you reset and put the timeline back. And so, like, he's summoning that with some pretty fearsome intent. And so that might affect how it looks. And so, hence the spiky, big, toothy guy that we get. But Papyrus presumably isn't summoning his attacks in the same context. So his would probably look different. And I did look for similarities between, okay, here's Sans' design, here's the design of his blaster. They both kind of have tall, rounded skulls. They both have the triangular nose, kind of the big rounded sockets, a permanent grin. Like, there's a few parallels there. But I looked at that and figured out, okay, how does that translate to Papyrus's features, and how would that be translated over into his blaster? So I did look at the bros themselves for inspiration, but then thinking about their personality and trying to decide, like, okay, what's the mood I want to evoke, and what kind of creature would fit with that. So, like, Papyrus is in the beginning of Unexpected Guests, when he's trying to impress his friends with his special attack. He comes up with something very impressive indeed. It's this whole blaster with giant wings, because wings are cool. It's a dragon, because dragons are cool. Come on. Yeah. And then it has the personality to match, that it is not just a one-to-one copy of Papyrus, but his blaster is definitely a lot of his sort of desire for affection and attention and love of his friends. And so that's what went into the personality. And then drawing on, my anatomical knowledge, perhaps unsurprising to harken back to that picture I drew of my mom riding the T-Rex, I've liked dinosaurs for as long as I've been drawing.
I mean, dinosaurs are amazing.
And, like, I really seriously wanted to be a paleontologist for most of my life. So there's a lot of, like, actual anatomical knowledge that I'm drawing on. Obviously for dragons, which can't actually exist, but I wanted to make it look like they could. And again, like, not just drawing on mammals, for their anatomy, but also dinosaurs and other reptiles,
Yeah.
and birds and things.
By the way, shout out to Gunner Boy in the chat, our usual
Hi,
co-host,
Connor.
who couldn't be here with us today. uh, yeah. Anyways, yeah. Honestly, honestly, when it comes to like with the whole like can dragons exist and stuff like that, it's really interesting when people like try to add to try to logically add fantasy elements into stuff like that. uh, I mean, a lot of the time when it comes to fantasy stories, they'll add in like magic or magic and a whole bunch of other stuff without really thinking about how it would affect things. And
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, a lot of time uh, to co- to go back to Game of Thrones for a bit, a lot of the time when you think about it, it's like having a dragon in a medieval setting is kind of like having a freaking Harrier jet, or
Yeah.
with like the wildfire substance, it would all that's all green, that's green and stuff and explodes like it does. I'm just like, I was basically thinking like, hey, what if we put nitroglycerin in the 15th century or something like that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just all sorts of other stuff how they affect how they affects certain stuff, how they would logically affect things, is really interesting to me, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But yeah, I just like adding that little touch of realism, and I always get people asking like, how can you stand to draw all those bones? And it's like, well, I have a lengthy knowledge of how bones work, and like the thing I always just want to say is that they follow patterns. Bones follow patterns, and if you remember the patterns, then it becomes a lot easier and a lot less overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Nature loves patterns, so
Yes, it does. Okay, so before we go into any more of our questions, I want to kind of catch up in the chat a bit. The only chat active right now is the YouTube chat, so everything's going to be from there. Um, but from Dragon Eve, uh, a chapter that you might want to put into unexpected guests, but not know how to finish it. How interesting! Yeah, your fusion designs and descriptions for them are awesome. So that's not
yay.
a question, but and then
Wait a minute.
Maddie, that's not a question. And Maddie Hatter is also giving a compliment, saying that this isn't as much of a problem as it used to be in the old days, but it's so nice to see Papyrus being shown accurately and not just that naive boy. And
Yes.
that you write everyone so well.
Yes, thank you.
I like Connor Boy's comment. The pattern of bones sounds like a horror movie. That does sound like a horror movie.
It does.
You're not into natural history at all.
uh,
But yeah, that's kind of long been one of my things too. And like, yes, I admit, in my really early stories when I was first getting into the fandom, I did not write Papyrus as, knowing as much as he did, or like that he actually liked spaghetti. But then I found discussion like actually looking into his character, and it's like, oh my god, there's so much we don't know about this guy, and he doesn't actually seem to eat anything, much less his spaghetti. And then like the Q&A came out for the first anniversary, which confirmed that Papyrus didn't eat his own spaghetti, and it's like, oh my god, what is happening with this man?
I like that he likes the dinosaur egg oatmeal.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's actually kind of funny. I've run into like fic authors who don't know that that's a thing, and so they like wrote that he like had actual dinosaur eggs in his spaghetti somehow. And it's like, or not his spaghetti, his oatmeal. But like meanwhile, I'm sitting here with it like actually on my shelf right now in my kitchen. So like it's it doesn't surprise me at all that Papyrus likes it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just, you know, going in and researching the characters is so important for understanding them.
Yeah. I mean, that was always one of my biggest pet peeves and stuff. Honestly, gonna be honest, I got into writing Undertale, fan fiction and all that mainly because I was frustrated that the stuff I wanted to see in fanfics wasn't appearing. So I basically pulled a Thanos and I was like, fine, I'll do it myself.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I am doing too, because like I'm not into shipping or anything, like either self-shipping or reader fic or like even just the characters being shipped with one another. It's just like I've never been into that, and the amount of gen fic or just general uh is so small, and it's like I want to read stuff with my specific headcanons, but no one's writing with my specific headcanon, so I guess I'm writing it myself. So yeah, that's
the
just
woes the woes of writing fan fiction, having to write it mainly because no one else will do it for me.
Yeah. Yeah, and then I get stuck and I'm like, gosh darn it, why hasn't this fic updated? Like, oh, it's because I need to write it myself.
Oh yeah, that's right.
That's always the worst, though. It's like you finally find like the fic that has the right sort of stuff to it, but then you catch up. Then you finish like the last chapter, and you're just like, oh, it's not over yet. When was the last time this updated? 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, and I know I'm running into that a little bit with a couple of my fics that I have posted. Like I know I haven't actually updated Bark at the Moon in a long time, but I've been working on it again. So hopefully soon.
I swear I'm doing it.
Yeah.
I can't.
And then
even
one of
say
my
that
earliest fics I got stuck on. I think because I realized I had like messed up the timeline of events somehow, and it's just like, oh, I don't know how to, how to deal with that.
I don't know how to fix it.
I'm just gonna sit on it for a while, and then now it's been like 4 years. Oops.
Oops.
I'll get back to it eventually.
Yeah.
Eventually.
Yeah, that's always how I feel. Like I never want to like say that I've completely abandoned a story or that it's on permanent hiatus. It's like, no, I still like thinking about it. I just don't have any ideas of how to actually write it.
Yeah.
So yeah. Yep, that's pretty much why I write or create, is because I have a hard time finding other stories that are telling the same stuff in the same way that I enjoy. Like it really is a me problem. Like I don't want to say that other people are writing the characters wrong or they shouldn't write that kind of thing. It's like, no, it's just it's not fun for me to read.
It's just not my cup of tea.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's basically it's basically like I have a specific taste of thing. Like you said, you're not into shipping and stuff. Well, I kind of exact opposite problem. The characters I like to ship together, like they only had like a few fics and they weren't all that long, and I'm just like, no, I'm going to make a long one that's like a big grand epic story and all that. and actually have characters be in a relationship longer than, oh hey, yeah, they kiss at the end of the movie. Yeah. Yeah, moving on now. but but yeah, I understand your grievances and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Uh Speaking of your writing, how do you balance making and releasing comics while also writing?
Um, well, the comic kind of takes priority a little bit because it has a set deadline that I
Mhm.
update by. And that's a lot like easier to sort of stay on top of than trying to give myself a writing deadline because I get stuck. Like I was saying, I get stuck on a scene and don't know how to continue it, and I'd rather give myself like the time to think on it than try and force out an update by a certain time. So the writing is kind of in the background, um, while the comic, like when I'm feeling up to working on something, that's usually what I do because I have a audience waiting for it. And, like I
Yeah.
know I have people who are fans of my writing too, but the writing is a lot harder to sort of uh, stick
to
into a schedule.
Yeah, to consistently release things for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That
So, and yeah, like, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. That's one of the things like I noticed like one of the things that was like a hard shift for me was like, okay, so I originally was on the Untitled, which not the greatest place, but that's beside the point. And the thing was, is like I was used to like getting notifications like, oh, someone liked this post, liked your post, someone liked your post, someone liked your post, like every like a good like stream of like serotonin right into my brain. So when I left the amino for my own reasons and stuff. Switching entirely over to Archive of Our Own was a big dramatic shift because if you don't know, a lot of time with Archive of Your Own, it's like you'll get like one or two when you release a new chapter, you'll get a couple kudos and maybe like one comment if you're lucky. That's
Yeah.
at least if you are where I am right now. So yeah, it was a really hard shift to go from like whenever I posted something, getting all these like, oh look, people like me and stuff, to being like, anyone got a comment? Gotta give me another
Yeah.
kudos.
Could someone say
Hello.
something, please? It's lonely here.
Yeah.
Please, please say I have an actual audience that's actually reading this, and I'm not just shooting into the void for no reason.
hmm Yeah, it definitely is a lot harder for things to get noticed on certain sites, but
Yeah.
like then you will have that one person who's like, "Oh man, I really like this fic. This is such a hard thing to find, and I really liked how characterize people or whatever." And
Mhm.
it's like, "Yay!"
Yeah, getting a nice, well written comment, a comment that shows that someone really cares about your story is just like, it's just like the biggest boost of like of serotonin. Just like, yes, someone cares so much that they wrote this and thought about it, my story this much. Hallelujah.
Mhm.
But yeah, looking at the questions ahead, that I was kind of gonna say something that tied into that was that like how my process for my comic is that it also helps that unexpected guests, like the main story of it, is completely written. Like
Ah.
it's
Mhm.
it's all written out, and so like I'm not having to come up with the next page uh every week. It is already written for me, and I just have to come up with how I want to draw it.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That
Yeah.
definitely answers that question.
Mhm.
uh, okay. So we were talking about Papyrus earlier. Let's go back to Papyrus real quick. Um, According to Papyrus's dream, he was Gaster's engineer.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very interesting route, which not many people take. So, what was the thought process behind making him Gaster's engineer?
So, yeah, it's something that's always kind of frustrated me, and this goes a little bit back to balancing how characters are involved in the story. Is that a lot of the theories about Gaster or Sans' past or whatever, like even if they include Papyrus, he's still not really involved, as in like actively participating. And I think that's because a lot of people don't realize what he can actually do. And like I'm not the only person who has had this thought or had canon. I know I've got a post on my blog somewhere that points out that Papyrus builds puzzles. He builds a lot of puzzles.
Yeah.
That's not something you can just do. If you look at his puzzles, like, yeah, you've got the fairly simple, straightforward, step on the switch to change the shape or whatever. But like, that's not exactly, easy peasy engineering. But then he also has an invisible electricity maze.
Oh yeah.
How do you build that? You look at all this stuff in his Gauntlet of Deadly Terror. He had to figure out how to rig all that up. So like, he knows how to build stuff. And so putting him as the like engineer who's actually handling the sort of mechanical part of whatever machines Gaster built just made perfect sense. And this actually took me a long time to realize, and once I did, I felt really dumb, because how did I not realize that before? Like, Sans has the theoretical physics side of things covered, but you also need someone who can actually build the stuff too.
True.
So yeah, that's just like, okay, obviously he's the engineer. He builds stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
But yeah, like I said, it just seemed like the perfect way to put Papyrus like directly at the center of the accident that happened, and might be one reason he feels so bad about it.
Oh no! Oh.
Yep.
No, Papyrus, my baby boy. He's not a baby, but I love him. He's my son. So.
Yes. We in this house we love Papyrus.
In this house we love Papyrus.
We stand Papyrus in this house. All right. Well, moving a bit along. I don't think I've actually. No, that's no idea. I already answered that.
Pasta, you're too close to the microphone. Please step back
sorry.
a little bit.
What do you mean, guys? It's completely fine. I'm sorry for all our headphone listeners. Anyways, well, this is something that Cupcake. This is a question she actually wrote. You managed to lay out a lot of things, both well-known and more obscure, about Undertale, especially the skeletons in your comic, and make them work to fit the plot. How do you manage to keep everything straight? Like, how do you manage to keep balancing everything?
My brain holds things.
Yeah. Honestly,
I keep them on my brain shelves.
Yeah.
Honestly, when we're talking about lore and stuff, like, Chapter 7 of Unexpected Guests was a heck of a ride for me. One, because it was a trip. Yeah. One, because it was 40 pages, and I didn't expect it to be that long or as dialogue heavy. And two,
you're talking to the person who had to draw all that. So. That was a lot.
Well, me and Cupcake had to voice act it together because that's how we do.
That's what we do. Whenever we read through a comic, we will always read through it together before, like, the week before the interview, and we'll voice act the characters.
Oh, fun.
And Pasta was Sans, so.
You had some fun ones then. But yeah, as far as lore, and like keeping it all straight goes, is like basically how I even go about like writing the characters is to like research as much about them as possible, like what's canon, reading other people's analysis of them, because like they might point out something I didn't notice about the character, and it's like, oh, that's really interesting, I should take that into account. And so like by this point, at least like 6 years into the fandom, I have a pretty established set of like headcanons and just like how I write the characters that I try to stay true to, as well as, you know, remembering what is canon, like what are some of the lines, what are some of the facts. There's some really great resources out there that document all of the dialogue and screenshots of things, such as shout out to Undertale Encyclopedia. I use them all the time. Just to double check, you know, did that character actually say that? Or was that fanon? Or when did that come up? Or what were they doing at this moment? And just like going back and watching playthroughs of the games. Like, it really is just, you know, going back and kind of double checking your work up against the original. And then just kind of sticking with it. And that helps just generally keep things consistent.
Yeah. Honestly, with Undertale, it is kind of hard to keep up with all that lore and stuff. But what I really liked, that what your fic did that a lot of others didn't, was that in Chapter 7 when Sans basically just goes on a big expose of explaining everything to people and all that. He tells that to basically the whole cast, which is a rare thing in Undertale fandom stuff, where a lot of time is either just explained to us, the audience, while the characters don't really get a sense of it, or it's like explained to like one or two people, like Frisk or Flowey or someone like that, while all the other characters are just like, they learned about it later, I guess. But here it's like seeing people's like first initial reactions to Sans explaining everything about Gaster and his nightmares, and Sans and Frisk talking about their reset powers and all that stuff.
I like how Frisk just hits like Sans just looks over at Frisk like, I don't know, kid, what do you think? And then they just hit him with the bombshell. I have the power to reset time. Just like,
yeah, and see, that's, I think, you know, why I write this stuff is because I want the characters to react to this. Like, that's what is interesting to me, is how the characters feel about each other. And, you know, learning things like this, like, that's the point of writing that scene. It's not just for exposition. It is for these other characters to learn new things about their friends and their world, and, you know, potentially change some things. And at that point, Sans is just done. He has basically accepted that, you know, the timeline is just going to get reset anyway, so it doesn't matter whether he keeps it a secret or, you know, shares it, because no one's going to remember in the future.
Yeah.
So, and it took a lot to get him to that point, but he's very stubborn.
Like, me and Pasta just kind of kept screaming through a lot of chapter 7 while we were reading it. Just let the man sleep.
Yeah, yep.
I seriously thought as soon as he
reaction
was done with
too.
his diatribe, he was just gonna stand up and fall over just from exhaustion.
He's about that at that point. But you know, you ever get to that point where you're just so tired where you can't even think about sleeping? Like,
yeah.
he's at that point where he's just like, yeah, he's insanely tired, but sleep is like the last thing on his mind.
I'm gonna come as like a weird outsider to this sort of thought process, and just to like alienate myself from pretty much every creative person on the planet, but I have not gone a single night without some amount of sleep. I've never like done an all-nighter. I've never done any of that. I've come close like once or twice, like staying up to like 5 a.m. and stuff like that. But other times, yeah, no. I just
I mean,
I've kept a
good.
fairly good sleep schedule, as fairly good as you can, for like going to bed at 2 a.m. and then waking up at like 9 a.m. for your classes, and then coming back and then taking a nap afterwards.
Well, that's actually pretty good that you haven't had to do anything like that.
Yeah.
But oh man, I had some.
I just
nights
hear
in
all
college.
I hear all these
Oof.
creative people just being like, oh, I had to stay up for so long to like finish this one thing, and I'm just like, I just went to bed and just finished it later.
Yeah.
The
I mean,
only time No, you go ahead.
Oh, well, I'm just saying that, like, I totally get the whole, you get on a roll in your art and then it's a lot later than you realize, but then, like, I've also definitely had, those running into deadlines at college where you have to get a thing done and there's basically nothing for it except to stay up, and it sucks. Try not to do that. It's not good for you.
Luckily, with a lot of my college stuff, since a lot of the assignments I turn in online, and they just it's not like due by class time; it's like due by like 11:59 that night. If I
have some breathing room.
Yeah, it's not it's like if I miss the deadline and stuff, at least it's still only like 12, so I'm just like, oh, I didn't finish it, but at least I can go to bed.
So, but yeah, like, needless to say, Sans is exhausted, but he did get at least a little sleep before that whole thing. Otherwise, he probably wouldn't have lasted for that whole conversation.
I really like how you did the part where he was kind of debating whether to wake up or not. Because I have been in that exact state so many times.
Oh no!
And it just felt so accurate. Just like listening to a conversation while you're still sort of technically sleeping, and it's just like, do I want to wake up to this?
Yeah.
They don't know that I'm actually conscious yet. Should I tell them?
Should I let them know, or should I try to drift back into unconsciousness?
Yeah. Sans probably after all that is like, I should have just kept pretending to be asleep. But kind of like he talks about later is that, like, that wouldn't have actually prevented any of this from eventually happening.
Yeah, it would have happened eventually. And then it probably would have gone on for longer because he wouldn't have the excuse of, I'm really tired, I need to sleep now.
Yeah. So that's all the kind of stuff that I have to think about in the story, is like what actually makes sense for the characters to choose.
Speaking of
oh, well, I just wanted to touch on one more thing, sort of going back to the question of making the lore fit the plot. It's more like my plots come from the lore. Like, I build a lot of my stories based on what I try to, connect all of the dots of, like, okay, this is the evidence for Gaster, and this is how we think he was connected to Sans, but how does Papyrus fit into this? And it's like, my stories, like I said, they come out of the lore. Like even how the Gaster Blasters work, come from sort of my observations of how attacks actually work in the game sometimes. Like Muffet has her pet, and there's the dummies in Mad Dummies fight that kind of have a mind of their own. And then I have some extra headcanons layered in there as well, but it is based on stuff we see in the game.
Yeah.
Dummies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, can I just one of my favorite reactions in chapter 7 for all that like laying out of plot and stuff is just one Alphys' reaction being Alphys' reaction talking about like alternate universes and stuff and how she relates that back to an anime she's watching.
Anime.
Yeah.
But that was a fun part to draw.
Yeah. Also,
I bet.
That's one of the cute things about Alphys.
Undyne just being like, our friendship transcends time and space. That's awesome.
That's
like, how else is she going to react?
Yeah, exactly.
In a post past this timeline, she's going to be stoked that she and Fritz have such a strong friendship that she can still feel it even when time has been rewound. Like, Undyne's just that kind of person that it's obvious how much she values her friendships.
This isn't written anywhere in the questions, but I wanted to comment on how I like, and it's both interesting that unlike a lot of other comics and fan fictions and whatever that will have Frisk go through each run at least once, you have had Frisk only go through neutral, because you have to do neutral, and pacifist, and so they don't have the experience of fighting Sans, but then you bring Flowey in, who does, and like it makes so much sense.
Yeah, like we do kind of have a question that touches on this, but that I like playing with stories and tropes that I haven't seen the rest of the fandom do as much, and so like even by the time I started posting unexpected guests, which was maybe only a year into the fandom, maybe a year or two, the whole like Frisk has done millions of timelines and runs and killed everyone thousands of times, that had already been done so much that it's just like, okay, isn't it more interesting though if they don't know everything and have to learn it through the course of the story?
Yeah,
like that. I find that much more interesting for them to not know everything. It's the same way I find it more interesting for Sans not to know everything about timelines and remembering resets. Because then you get to have discover stuff and find out, these plot points. And like I said, it's more interesting for me to have these characters react learning this stuff than it is just to know it. And so then, bringing Flowey in, you still get that knowledgeable person who's done a million different runs and can have advice based on that. But then this situation is still new for them. And so, like, that causes problems with Flowey because he likes new situations to play with. And that good. But he brings that knowledge in and, comes to some wrong conclusions about it in chapter 7 and causes problems.
Yes.
But he'll come in handy again in the next chapter.
Oh, I'm sure.
No spoilers, but
no spoilers.
Of course not.
Chapter 10 is going to be another big one. So
are you allowed to divulge how many chapters there will be in the comic, or do you want to keep that secret?
No, I've shared that here and there. And the truth is it changes a little bit just because of aforementioned, like sometimes I think of a chapter to add. Not all chapters may end up as comic chapters. I might just post them as fic. But I think as it stands, I've got chapter 10. There's a bit of sort of an epilogue. It was originally the epilogue, and then I thought of more stuff to write. So there's that. But I think there's going to be at least 2 more chapters after that. So 13-ish chapters?
13-ish?
Yeah.
You heard here first, folks. There's gonna be 13 chapters of unexpected guests, and me saying that, I'm just gonna be like me saying that. Watch Untitled Chapter like is gonna be in the middle of writing be in the middle of writing the next chapter and be like, "Hang on, I think I could do a bit more," and then it's gonna go up to like 14 or 15.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of already at that, but as far as like chapters that will be comic chapters as opposed to just fic exclusive, let's see, because I have them all collected more or less. Yeah, at least 13 comic chapters for sure. Probably.
So yeah, so it's still so, but you know.
Yeah, it's
but roughly
it's got
13.
the little wiggly tilde.
Yeah.
About 13.
About 13, yes.
Yeah.
Anyway. And yeah, a lot of the later chapters are mostly just sort of wrapping up the main action, but
which is understandable.
Yeah.
I can tell we haven't reached the climax yet.
No. Not just yet. We're getting there. But I hope everyone likes it.
Yeah. Anyways.
I only keep drawing it and posting it.
What were you about to say, Cupcake?
It's your turn to ask a question, Pasta.
Oh yeah, well this is one of the questions I came up with. And this involves the jerk with the pedals.
The weed.
The weed. Flowey coming to the surface by themselves was an interesting choice. It was an interesting choice that most don't take. What made you want to do that?
Well, again, just kind of thinking about his character and what motivates him, I think him avoiding boredom is a really big motivator for him, because he's done literally everything he can think to do. What's the point of continuing to live if he can't figure out new stuff to do?
Yeah.
So
boring.
And yeah. And so I think he at the end of the game is genuine that he doesn't want to, anyone else to see him the way he is. But I don't think he would be happy just staying down in an empty underground anymore.
Yeah.
Like how he says in the comics, like, couldn't take just literally watching grass grow.
Yeah. Yes.
And so he decided that it would be way better to see what Frisk was up to. It was the closest thing he'd had to a true friend in way too long. That sit in a bunch of old memories.
Yeah.
So yeah, he basically explains his motivation there in chapter 5.
No, 6.
Or 6. No, 6.
I remember that specifically because that was the first page of it I ever discovered of it, and I'm just like, wow, Flower doesn't come here until chapter 6. Interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot that happens before that, huh?
Also, sorry, I'm trying to think of how to word this.
Words.
Words. It's But it's also really, really cool that the fact that Flowey at some point is on the surface now with everybody else was kind of confirmed by Toby in the alarm clock dialogue.
Yeah, I think that's interesting too.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean,
Like,
I think the reason that a lot of people put Flowey on the surface and stuff is mainly based off of this one comic series that was made by Lynx Griffin, who is another wonderful artist that I'm glad that I've had to interview them. And there's this one where just like Frisk comes and basically gets Flowey and all that for basically the reason. Basically the reason is like they don't want Flowey just to be there all by themselves, and also they don't want them to be there just to have someone to talk to, like, hey, you also have the godlike power to reset time and space. Maybe
hey,
we can talk
know
about
how
that.
I feel. In a way.
Yeah, I think a lot of people like the idea of Flowey coming to the surface one way or another. It just depends on how you think he gets there.
Yeah. But I do really like your interpretation of, I'm bored, let's see what they're doing on the surface.
Yeah.
And then Flowey's just like, as soon as he gets to the surface, like, wow, what the heck did I stay in the underground? This is way more interesting.
Yeah.
This is way more fun. Okay, this is just
also
Flowey's a silly question.
Can I just say Flowey's a freaking jerk in this comic? I've been wanting to.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I still try to keep him, like, he has learned a little bit to be somewhat less of a jerk, but he's got a lot of unlearning to do. He spent a long time just being absolutely awful. That's not just going to go away.
Yeah.
So many times I was just like, where's the freaking weed killer? Just sprinkle that into him.
Yeah, he's still kind of a selfish brat. That has not changed. And it probably isn't going to change.
It's basically what happens.
While.
It's basically what happens when like the childish thing of just wanting to explore stuff while not really caring what happens to it. Like, honestly, it's like I think back to like my parents told me I used to break a lot of stuff of theirs. And I thought back to, like, what was my thought process back then? And I think the thought process was something like this. Oh, hey, this thing bends. I wonder how far I can make it bend. Oh, that much?
Yeah.
Well?
Yeah. I think that's kind of how Flowey goes about a lot of things.
Yeah, basically just the, like, childlike wanting to, like, explore and discover stuff without the without them being all like, without the like veneer of it being all like cutesy and stuff. You being like, no, you can't do that.
Yeah, and yeah, he's had, if he did break something and he didn't want to be broken, he had a reset. He could just reset it and it'd be fine.
Yeah.
So he doesn't have that sense of like self-control of like, hey, maybe I shouldn't do this. It's like, it's fine if I do this once.
Which also could come from the fact that he was, well, quite literally a prince even when he was still alive. So he probably did still have the childish desires of like, if anything breaks, my mom and dad can just fix it for me because they're the king and queen.
Yeah, maybe. I don't get as strong of a like spoiled brat prince impression from what we know of Azriel when he was Azriel. But yeah, I can definitely see that possibly being a factor.
Yeah, I mean that certainly makes sense for like, say, like an Undertale version of him just being like, I'm not worried about consequences. I just, if I screw up, my parents will just get me out of it somehow.
So yeah, I definitely wanted to sort of keep Flowey's sort of entitled, like, no concern for consequences, but he's starting to think about that more now that he doesn't have control of the timeline, and that, due to the events of True Pacifist, he was able to realize, what he'd done.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, he's had a bit of character development, but he's certainly not a nice, bright, happy character.
No, especially not, towards Sans, the smiley trash bag.
No. But yeah, I can imagine that, I can only imagine how frustrated Flowey got trying to beat Sans. And I like to imagine that he never could beat him. I don't know why I have that impression, but it's funny to think about. So.
It is. I mean, sorry, I don't know where I was going with that thought process. Never mind.
Yeah.
Well,
so
we have more questions.
We do, yes.
Yes, we do.
So, what Undertale content and general media did you take inspiration from when designing your story? I mean, Full Metal Alchemist is apparent from what you said before.
But that's not Undertale content.
That's not Undertale content, no. So, anything like any comics or fan fictions or anything that inspired you?
I mean, the general fascination with Gaster and speculating about, his origins and how he related to the Skelebros has long been one of my favorite topics in Undertale fan content. But I kind of run into the issue of, like, no one really... I feel like it's very difficult to find stories that sort of cover that in a way I enjoy. So I don't read a lot of other, like, Undertale content, honestly. Just because part of it is that it's just so hard to sort through all of the stuff I don't want to see or read.
True, right.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah, but I can think of a few examples. So, the idea of Papyrus having Gaster Blasters at all, I actually owe a little bit to a short, like, one-shot comic that Zarla did a long time ago. Of Papyrus summoning Gaster Blasters.
Yeah.
She didn't give him unique designs aside from giving them, the googly eyes.
The googly eyes, yes.
Oh yes, I love that.
But,
and I love when I love when you have the blaster have the googly eyes on it.
Yes.
Oh yes.
It is a trait of Papyrus that is common across his blasters, as well as to go back to the refused fusion AU, any fusion with Papyrus can also do the googly eyes. So that's Papyrus
important.
feature.
Yes, it's very important.
So I did get sort of the point of that comic, though, was pointing out that Papyrus apparently summons non-bone attacks. I was like, okay, what are non-bone attacks that he could summon? Like, well, Gaster Blasters. And so that kind of, made me realize that was a possibility to begin with. But I always liked the idea of his blasters looking different from Sans's. So, like, that's been a long time. Headcanon of mine. But then I also owe at least a little of the stylistic look of my comic to Wiley's Insomnia, of having the panels on a black background. Yes, I borrowed that from Insomnia, because it just seemed like an easy way to do comic panels, at least with the program I was using, which I am no longer using. Rest in peace, Photoshop Elements 8.
rest in peace.
Because it was just really easy to draw a shape tool, and then there's your panel. So it made sense to do it that way.
Yeah.
So like stylistically, that's where that sort of style of comic page comes from. But then I actually even thinking about doing a comic and not worrying about it being perfect to a certain lover of piggies.
Ah.
Because when she would talk about how she did her comic Aftertale, she talked about how the main point was to just do the story, tell the story, don't worry about how it looks, just get it out there. And she was working with Sharpie and colored pencil and just real basic art materials, and still created something that thousands of people loved and went crazy about a little bit.
A little bit.
So something that I had long struggled with other comics that I'd tried to do was that I'd try to make each panel perfectly square. I'd try to make all the details perfect. I'd try to draw the characters always on model, and it was just a real pain. And it was very easy for me to burn out and never finish a comic like that. And so hearing someone talk about, it doesn't have to be perfect, just tell your story, sort of made something click for me, I guess. And so like obviously I still put a lot of effort into my pages for unexpected guests, but I'm not like worried about making sure characters are on model every single panel, or that my line art is perfectly smooth and all that. Like I know it probably sounds like I say, oh, my work is terrible. Like, it looks beautiful. What are you talking about? But like that just comes from me drawing for close to 30 years now. So like that's just comes with like muscle memory and experience. But again, I'm not pressing myself to make it perfect. And that's a big part of how I've been able to draw it for so long. But yeah, it's all owed to some of the bigger names in the fandom that everyone recognizes. Sharing their work. That's the thing about fandom, is it's all connected.
Yep. Like it's really cool just like hearing you talk about this, because like thinking back, I'm like, oh yeah, we did interview Zarla, and oh yeah, we did interview Wiley Art. Like I forgot that was things that we did, because I still think of them as all these their comics are so good and stuff. And then like, wait a minute, we have been able to ask them about it firsthand. So.
So yeah, even if I don't, share all of the same headcanons or telling the same kind of story that they are, you can still draw on other people for inspiration and techniques.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just wondering, like, with have you ever read have you ever read Dogs of Future Past? Because that was like a big sort of.
Yes, I did. I liked it quite a lot. I also read Lynch Griffin's original story as well.
Oh, Skybox?
Yes, Skybox. That was really good too.
That was really good.
Yeah, I haven't watched Skybox, sadly.
You haven't read Skybox, Pasta?
I'm sorry, I haven't.
I am ashamed of you.
How dare you?
How dare you? Hey, maybe sometime we can, like, when we have time and we want to, we can read through it together. Maybe sometime if you want. Just as a fun thing to do. But anyways, back to the topic at hand.
Yes. So yeah, those were the definitely. There's actually one more artist, Kratzer Noi, who did The Thought. I originally I originally kind of planned for Unexpected Guests to look more like that. That sort of like loose, lightly colored, shaded style that Kratzer does so
Mm-hmm.
well. Like that was actually another one of my favorite comics back in the day. So I also recommend that one. Um,
Yeah.
but obviously, think my stylistic choices drifted away from that a little bit. But I guess I'd also say that that was a bit of an influence as well. I think someone actually sent me an ask a while back that said that my comic reminded them of the thought. And I was like, that was one of my favorites.
Yeah.
I have been compared to Senpai.
Yeah. Yeah, Lover of Piggies followed me once a while back. I don't think she still
Wow.
follows me, but yeah, that was definitely a Senpai
Wow.
kissed me moment.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I've definitely had some of those moments, and like even now, I still feel like a pretty small creator in the Undertale fandom.
Mhm.
But people have heard of me somehow, so it's like, whoa, where is everyone coming from?
Yeah.
But yeah, I kind of just otherwise keep to myself and just draw the fan art that I like and reblog the fan art that I like, and I guess people like that. So
Yeah.
yay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we're gonna start wrapping things up now because I don't think we have many more questions.
Chat.
Be-
Chat.
Yeah.
If you have
yeah, chat.
questions, chat.
Please speak
Please
now
write
or
them down.
forever hold your peace.
Or
Oh,
forever hold
also just
your questions for the live stream.
yeah. Also, just another thing I just want to mention before we do end this. Just the idea of Papyrus riding in on on his freaking bone dragon, and then
Yes.
and like and like going like and him just going like yeah, and him just blasting people like freaking Daenerys Targaryen does. Like say just say Dracarys on the back of Drogon, and I'm just like that is just such an awesome image, and not going to lie. Right now I'm working on my own Deltarune fic, and I've been and one of the things about it is Papyrus is actually going to be in the Dark World for a bit, the Deltarune version of him, and I'm gonna make him a necromancer, and I think like one of his like quote unquote late game spells would be him actually making a bone dragon and flying it into battle, which is just one of the coolest things I've ever thought of, and I'm really glad I've read Unexpected Guests so I can get the idea for that.
I mean, dragons are just cool.
Yeah.
Dragons are just cool in general.
I've liked dragons almost as long as I've liked dinosaurs. So like, of course, I was gonna do some Undertale thing where there's dragons, but
Yeah.
like,
I mean,
you also can't give me a cool skull and me not wonder what the rest of it could look like. And
yeah.
so like
It's a cool skull
that's
that's kind of that's sort of reptilian like, and it fires stuff off from its mouth.
yep. What's the rest of this dragon going to look like? So yeah, that's kind of where the whole idea of the full-bodied blasters, or at least how I wanted to do my take on them, because I wasn't the first person to make like a full-bodied Gaster Blaster design. Like the Gaster Blaster AU existed before I did anything with it for sure, but I wanted to do my own take on it that didn't rely on so much angst for it to happen. Like obviously
Yeah.
there's still some, but listen, angst is fun.
Yeah, eggs is
It
fun.
I also like fluff, and I wanted the brothers to be able to interact with giant blaster beasts and not
Yes.
be the giant blaster beasts for once. So
Yeah. Yes. that is definitely a great take on it. I have to say, like, I have many favorite scenes from the comic, but one of my favorites is when Frisk is like, "Can I ride it?" And Papyrus, he goes through all of the thoughts, and then is like, "Okay, fine, yes, you can ride the dangerous bone dragon attack blaster thing," and then
Yay!
and then it ends up and then it ends up flying around, and both Sans and Papyrus are just kind of panicking, trying to figure out how to get Frisk down.
Yep. Because they were asked by Toriel, who you don't want to make mad in any context.
Oh
No.
yeah,
Look after her child.
Another small thing from the comic that I loved is just the Toriel disapproving face was spot on.
Yes, it was beautiful.
I love that expression in the game, and I was basically looking for any excuse to get to draw it in the comic, because the expressions in Undertale are so good.
They are. They're so
They're
good.
so much fun.
Like, especially, I would have to say, Papyrus's, Toriel's, and Flowey's are some of my all-time favorites. Add on to that, Undyne and some of the weird faces she makes, too.
Maddie Hatter posted a thing just like, I love the don't come crying to me if you get hurt, except do so I can heal you.
Yes.
That is so Papyrus.
It is so Papyrus.
Yes. That's why I wrote it, because it was so Papyrus. What else is he going to do? He's not going to just let you get hurt.
No, of course not.
Like, in the game, he will fight you. He will battle you down to 1 HP. And I feel like that's something a lot of people don't think about very much when it comes to Papyrus.
Which not gonna lie, first time I got through him, that's how I did it. I just lost to him like 3 times in a row, then he let me leave.
Yeah. Because, like, he likes to battle. He likes to show off his cool moves. But he also knows when to hold back, and he won't just let you stay hurt. He'll patch you up after the fact.
Yeah, and he brings you back to full health and puts you in the dungeon.
Yep.
Which is his shed, and he gives you some dog food, and then if you keep ending up there, gives you some hot dogs in the dog food.
Yep.
Yeah.
So he's
looking out
courteous.
For you. Yes.
Yeah, it's such a courteous person. I wish other video game characters were like that. Hey, you lost to me, but that's okay. I'm gonna put you in prison, and you can get out, and we can fight later.
Yeah. Papyrus is extremely good, and I try to maintain that in any of the stories I write with him, even when he's sad.
Yeah.
Yes. Sad Papyrus.
Yeah. So anyway, to wrap things up, one last question that I kind of ask all the people that come on here, like as the last sort of question, because it's just so like it just can fit anywhere. How do you feel about your current standing in the Undertale fandom?
I touched on it a little bit earlier, but I think I'm fairly satisfied that I don't feel like I'm one of the like big famous creators that people are like too afraid to talk to or whatever, and just think that they're so just like impossible to reach. But that like I do have a good following of fans that I know I can count on to enjoy and comment on my things, because it's good feedback. Like it means that people like what I'm doing and the story that I'm telling, and that obviously as an artist you live on feedback.
Yes.
And the fact that people enjoy it so much is really nice, because you never know if something is going to get popular. Like I started out with Unexpected Guests thinking like, it probably has a chance of getting popular, but I don't know if it actually will. But I just want to tell the story, and if it gets popular, that's cool. And it really honestly has. Like, I will admit that
Mm-hmm.
it is a fairly popular webcomic. But at the same time, I'm not like overwhelmed with people trying to, I don't know, be weird.
Can you draw this? Can you put this in your comic?
Yeah. I have gotten that sometimes, but I try
yeah.
to be straightforward
I've
and
gotten
just,
that too. It's just like, hey, you should have added a new character, and I'm just like, no, and they're just like, why? Because that's not how it's gonna go, and that would just screw up everything.
I think every story writer probably gets that at least once.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's just part of being a creator, is that there's always going to be someone who wants to suggest something. And I know they think it's because they think it would be cool, but sometimes you've got to trust that the author knows what they're doing and that they already have a plan.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah,
like I said, I'm satisfied that, you know, people will mention me as like a comic creator, that they someone like my thing. But like, at the same time, I don't feel like my characters have, you know, sort of gotten out of my hands. Like, I feel like that's happened with a lot of some of the AU characters,
Mm-hmm.
that like they've drifted away a little bit from how the original author wrote them a little
Definitely.
bit. But with my comic, it's either, you know, a basically canon character or a giant skeleton dragon, and that's hard for a lot of people to draw.
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
So I think I'm at a pretty good balance of like being relatively well known, but not like crazy popular, and like people doing weird stuff on my behalf when I didn't want them to, or, you know, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're gonna end it here now. Oh, the audio's cutting out. Well, it's good that we're ending it here then.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah,
And
thank
I mean,
you all for coming. Thank you, Cupcake,
I
for
just
being
wanted to say.
Oh.
Oh, sorry, I keep interrupting. I just wanted to say that, you know, if anyone is listening and, you know, thinks of a question later, like, my ask box is open. Like, I love talking to people about my comic. That's how we filled like 2 hours of
Yeah, just
chatting.
about. Anyways, thank you all for coming. Have yourselves a great night. Thank you, Cupcake, for being a wonderful co-host as always, and thank you, Undertale Thingums, for coming onto the podcast and having a little chat with us.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. It was fun.
Yeah. Also, for those who are actually here just for the Hold the Turn podcast and actually became interested because of this episode, or our continuous viewers, we are actually going to be live next not next week, the week after next week, on the 21st, for our
the 21st,
for our holiday special,
woo!
Which will be a whole bunch of fun. We plan to have a good amount of guests there, and the theme of this year holiday special would be, well, talking about the holidays from Deltarune, and just our general like thoughts and feelings on them, and maybe some theory and speculation. Ooh, but yeah.
Ooh.
Anyways, thank you all for watching.